Today on the newscast, Israel halts its Gaza offensive after the UN warned of a possible war crime. Get all the breaking details next. Hey folks, welcome to the newscast. We've got more developments coming out of that little corner of the world which never sleeps. The Middle East, a Hamas official just told me that the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, which began earlier today, is holding for now. Of course, we'll see what happens later tonight during Israel's 72-hour-long offensive in Gaza. In the meantime, the world's attention is now focused on the Rafah border crossing between Egypt and Gaza, where thousands upon thousands of Palestinians have gathered. It was almost like clockwork. As soon as that ceasefire went into effect, those thousands of people immediately headed to that Rafah border crossing in the hopes of leaving Gaza, entering into Egypt. Now, according to our State Department in D.C., they're going to allow some humanitarian cases to go through. But folks, it is really hard to believe that the Egyptian government, under pressure from Turkey and the rest of the global Muslim Brotherhood, is going to allow thousands of people to leave Gaza right now and head into Egypt. They want to keep them there inside Gaza, because the more Muslims that are in Gaza, the better. That plays well in the Middle East and among the global Ummah. So, we shall see what happens at that Rafah border crossing. But in the meantime, I want to get your take on this. Some are calling this a Hamas victory, or at least a historic win for Hamas. A ceasefire. The fighting has been halted. Thousands of people are heading to that Rafah border crossing. According to the IDF, some 12,000 rockets were launched out of Gaza during this 5-day offensive. Now, another thing that is important about this latest round of fighting is that Hamas brought its own destruction upon itself. Remember, Israel said, "Hey, look, if you don't stop firing rockets at us and firing missiles at us, we're going to target those missiles. We're going to target your terrorist infrastructure." And Hamas said, "No, let's go. Let's go toe-to-toe with Israel." And it's kind of funny, because Hamas leader Salem al-Aruri, who actually lives in Lebanon, not in Gaza, he's in southern Lebanon, called on Hamas to do exactly that, to fight Israel to the last man, to have zero hesitation. And the martyrdom that we're seeing among Hamas fighters, which we'll talk about in a second. They took that advice from Salem al-Aruri. Now, as it turns out, Salem al-Aruri may have already played his last hand. Yesterday, Israel reportedly targeted his home in southern Lebanon and killed him, along with his son and a number of other Hamas terrorists. The third point about this offensive that I think is important. The reason that Israel's withdrawing, the reason that this thing appears to be winding down, is because the main targets were hit. Israel, even though it didn't go into Gaza, by the way, even though Israel didn't send ground troops into Gaza, which Hamas was anticipating. They thought that Israel would throw the full weight of its army into Gaza, and there would be a full-blown ground assault. But Israel did not do that. Instead, they surrounded Gaza, they sealed it off, and they targeted Hamas military infrastructure from the air. Those targets were hit. And one of the big things that Israel was able to accomplish during this 5-day operation was the destruction of tunnel entrances, the likes of which we have never seen before. Hundreds of these Hamas tunnel entrances were destroyed. And you know what else was destroyed? Hamas's claim to be an invincible fighting force. Again, hundreds of these tunnels were destroyed. There is nothing like this again that we have ever seen before. And then lastly, something that I don't think many predicted. The Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas and his Fatah movement came out publicly, unusually so, and called for calm and for restraint, and for the attacks to end. So Israel felt like it accomplished enough militarily, and that the political goal was also accomplished. Hey, they got the message across to the PA. To Hamas, we are going to destroy you if you don't stop attacking us. And also, we are calling on the PA to come to the aid of Israel to help bring this thing to an end. So that's what's going on right now. A couple quick notes before I go. Number 1, that strike yesterday by Israel on Jenin in the West Bank, which we call the biblical heartland of Samaria. That was Israel's most deadly strike in the West Bank in some 20 years. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the days ahead. But I can tell you right now, this was a major blow to the terror apparatus of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in that region. Also, Israel is saying that it is continuing to target Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad throughout the West Bank, so this is not over by any stretch of the imagination. Also, Samir Kunter, who is behind the massacre of civilians in northern Israel back in 2011, he was released in that prisoner swap last Saturday in exchange for the release of 2 hostages. Well, Samir Kunter, according to Israeli media reports, he is already planning his next attack against Israel. He's right now in Syria, the country that has given him sanctuary before. And he's saying that his next attack will be even worse than his last attack. Last thing, Iran of course, threw its hat in the ring during this latest round of fighting between Israel and Hamas. They fired a volley of missiles at Arish, a Kurdistan region of Iraq, which is close to the Iranian border. And they apparently did that in retaliation for Israel striking Iranian assets on Iraqi soil in the past. And folks, This tells you everything that you need to know about Iran right now. Iran is completely focused on internal affairs. They're dealing with massive nationwide protests, almost certainly will continue to increase and grow in intensity. And what does Iran do when they feel cornered and backed into a bit of a military and political hole? What do? They lash out at Israel. You saw it in the immediate aftermath of that October 7th surprise attack. Iran was not happy with Israel, obviously, but they did not come to the aid of Hamas in any significant way. And even today, as things wind down, Iran's response, oh, we've condemned Israel. Oh, we've thrown some missiles at Arish, but that's it. And when the time is right, they will lash out again. Iran is playing the waiting game right now, folks. They know that Israel is reeling from this Hamas attack. They want to give it time for the dust to settle. See what Israel's next move is going to be. And when the time is right, they will lash out again. And that could be a serious problem for Israel, especially with the backing that Iran is providing Hamas right now. Which brings me to my final point. The big question on everyone's mind right now is this thing really over? Is the fighting really over between Israel and Hamas? They're pulling back. Israel says, for now, it is. They're seeing how things play out. But as we all know, this could easily flare up once again. I wouldn't be surprised if Israel goes back into Gaza sometime down the line and flattens the place. Hamas won't admit it, but their infrastructure was definitely degraded significantly during this 5-day operation. On the other hand, they proved that they still remain a threat to Israel, that they still have thousands of rockets, perhaps tens of thousands of rockets stockpiled. And we have to remember, folks, that Hamas is a patient organization. They are willing to wait. They proved it during the last 3 years since their last war with Israel. Back in May 2021, they proved it again with this latest round of fighting. They're willing to lie and wait, bide their time, wait for the right moment to strike. And make no mistake about it, they will strike again. I mentioned the martyrdom earlier. Hamas is reveling right now in the martyrdom that we're seeing. One of the things that they would love more than anything else is to have a full-blown war with Israel. Why? Because they use civilian life, women, children, the elderly. They use them as human shields. And they say, look, we are willing to sacrifice our people, our own people, if it means inflicting maximum damage on the Jews. That's what they want. So that's why they're taking a victory lap right now. Don't know how much celebrating is going on. Now, I don't know how much joy there is in Gaza right now. But Hamas leaders definitely are high-fiving each other right now, and they're looking towards the next confrontation with Israel. So, a lot to keep a close eye on. Obviously, we will be watching the Rafah border crossing closely tomorrow. Is it going to turn into a massive influx of Palestinians leaving Gaza and going into Egypt? How is Israel going to respond? Are they going to allow that? Also, the situation in Nablus and Jenin, 2 flashpoints in the northern West Bank. By the way, Hamas had planned a major offensive in Jenin. Thankfully, that did not come to fruition. But what happens now? What is the situation in the West Bank going to look like? And then, of course, how long is this ceasefire going to hold? Will Hamas stick to it? Will Israel stick to it? And then when the fighting resumes, as it surely will resume, will it be with twice the intensity, 3 times the intensity? That remains to be seen. What we do know is that no matter what happens, no matter how intense the fighting gets, no matter how many ceasefires are broken and then reinstated, Israel will ultimately prevail. They will defeat Hamas and destroy Hamas. Folks, I know it sounds strange to say that, especially after the events of October 7th, but that is what will happen. I know it, you know it, God knows it. One last note before we go. I mentioned the massive casualties on the part of Hamas. By some accounts, they've lost some 300 fighters, perhaps more. I mentioned the fact that they are reveling right now in the martyrdom of these fighters. But what we have to remember, and I think it's important to mention this, that every single person who died on the Hamas side was an enemy of the state of Israel. Not one innocent person was harmed. They were all bad people. Whether they were missile launchers, all of these people, whether they were suicide bombers, whether they were snipers, people who wanted to do harm to the people of Israel, innocent Israeli men, women and children. We can celebrate the fact that they're no longer a threat to Israel. They can't do any more harm. They can't harm any more innocent people. So they're celebrating martyrdom. They're dead. Until next time, God bless you, and remember, never hold your peace. Thanks so much for joining us here today on the Watchman Newscast. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the newscast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button. Click subscribe and tap the bell icon to turn on notifications for new episodes every weekday.